Pup and Bear by Kate Banks, illustrated by Nako Stoop. Whoosh! When the great gray owl swooped down, screeching, hoo-hoo, the Arctic wolves knew that the big freeze was on its way. They took shelter in a snowdrift and listened to the fierce wind holler and roar. They watched the snow blow in spirals, wrapping the world in a fluffy white coat. But then the wind's bitter cold breath turned warm, and the sun appeared. The big melt came, and one lone pup found itself on a sheet of ice, spinning out to sea. The pup slid into the water. He swam and he swam. When he had reached land, he burrowed into a snowbank. He was tired, and he wanted his mother. The pup closed his eyes and fell asleep, listening to the throb of silence across the still landscape. He woke to the feel of a cold nose against his fur. The smell was familiar. It was a polar bear. "You're not my mother," said the pup, flattening his ears against his head. "I'm not your mother," said the polar bear, "but I can cuddle you and keep you safe." The pup was shy and frightened. "Aren't you going to eat me?" he asked. "Polar bears eat wolves." "Not this one," said the polar bear, shaking her head. "Climb on my back, and I will take you to my den." The pup stretched a paw forward cautiously, then climbed onto the polar bear's back, and they crossed the tundra under the watchful eyes of a trio of baby puffins learning to fly. Back at the den, the polar bear licked and cleaned the pup. "I'm not your mother," she said, "but I can feed you and keep you warm." The next day, they set off across the wintry tundra. When they spotted a walrus with long, sharp tusks, the polar bear bellowed and chuffed. "Where are we going?" asked the pup as they neared the water. "I am not your mother," said the polar bear, "but I can show you where to catch a fish." They passed a snow goose perched on a nest of eggs. They sniffed the trail of a seal as he tried to outsmart them. They stopped at the water's edge, where the fish and the lemmings came and went in the wondrous wheel of life. The sun shone down on the crisp, crackling snow, and the polar bear rolled in the snowbank. "Come on," she said to the pup. "I'm not your mother, but I can play with you." When the pup tugged too hard at the polar bear's fur, the bear growled. "I'm not your mother," she said, "but I can scold you." Then she nuzzled the pup and tickled his tummy. Tired at last, the pup curled up against the bear, and they napped, listening to the wind whimper and sigh. The earth turned round and round, and the big freeze came, followed by the big melt, until at last the polar bear nudged the wolf, who wasn't a pup anymore. "I'm not your mother," she said, "but I know when it's time for you to go." She nuzzled the wolf one last time, and the wolf nuzzled her back. Then he walked out into the wide world. The wolf howled to the midnight sun, which glowed on the horizon, where the day ended and the night began, and he was answered by the cry of another wolf. Soon he was leading his own pack across the frozen tundra. Then one day, the wolf came upon a polar bear cub huddled in the snowdrift. "Where's your mother?" asked the wolf, but the cub didn't know. The wolf sniffed the cub and rubbed its fur with a wet nose. "You're not my mother," said the cub, cowering. "I'm not your mother," said the wolf, "but I can cuddle you and keep you warm." "Aren't you going to eat me?" asked the cub. "Wolves eat polar bears." "Not this one," said the wolf, shaking his head. "Climb on my back, and I will take you to my den." The polar bear clambered onto the wolf's back. "I am not your mother," said the wolf, "but you can stay with me until you're big enough to be on your own." And the wolf pack led the pack back across the tundra, along the path that went round and round in the wondrous wheel of life. The end.